here from the high school. Adam Rohde is here. I'm going down my screen. Marshall Spooner, assistant for the middle school, is here. Andrew Leday is here from our DEI. Is Chrissy here as well? Andrew?
She will be here shortly.
She's coming shortly? Okay, terrific.
She's on.
Oh,
I think I just let her in.
You let her in. Okay, great. And then Jeff DeTesto from the high school will be back, hopefully, as soon as he figures out why he got booted off. He will be back. So we have been talking a little bit, Jeff, Polly, and I, and the division heads, about things that we're sort of hearing anecdotally about what's been going on. One of the things, I think Jeff's back now, that has been coming up a lot is this idea of sleep patterns and the disruptions in those sleep patterns. So wondering if that's something that people here are struggling with, or things that you have found have been helpful. I'm going to unmute you, Jeff. There you go. Jeff, I just did the intro before and talked about you doing the recording. Are you still going to do that for this?
So I pushed record. I think we're good there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Jeff, I don't know if you heard that. I just started off by saying, you know, we were going to take questions and share ideas, and just brought up this idea of sleep and how a lot of people have been talking about how their students have had disruptions in sleep patterns, staying up super late and then being tired and having a hard time getting the work done.
So I can jump in just quickly and maybe introduce a little bit of the material that we just spoke about in N through 5 with sleep patterns, in terms of many parents kind of reaching out and saying they're having some difficulty sleeping, but they're also noticing that their children's sleep patterns have changed over the last couple of weeks. And I think as we step back and take a look, you know, many times that is something you see when kids are under stress, whether it be stress that is direct and something you can attach meaning to, or, you know, even for some of our youngest kids that are grappling with stressful situations just subliminally. So in terms of those sleep pattern disruptions, it might be more difficulty falling asleep, more difficulty getting to bed on time. On time is relative right now, for sure. Difficulty staying asleep. They may get up and come find parents, even some of our older kids, looking for reassurance in the middle of the night. Kids that do have difficulty kind of staying in their beds and staying asleep, oftentimes it does mean that they're sort of struggling to process what is going on. So we talked a little bit about just the need for routines. Even our older kids need those routines and routines at bedtime. Bedtimes can change, and we need to be a little flexible with the timing aspect, but being a little bit more consistent with the actual routines.
Could I just add a note about middle school too? Because I think you know, at that age, sleep patterns sort of start to shift naturally and biologically. And one of the reasons that we started our prep window at 8:30 to 9 and our first period class at 9 in the middle school is because we know that at adolescence, their circadian rhythm starts to shift and they become more alert later in the morning. My own children are up and out of bed before the sun's even up right now, and so that's great. But I expect that most of our students in the middle school aren't quite as chipper at 5:30 a.m. And so we tried to be proactive about that and take advantage of the fact that that with remote learning we could sort of retool and reprogram the day. And so that's at the beginning of the day. One thing I'd say about the end of the day, I just want to suggest that parents, and I'm sure most or maybe all of you are doing this already, but are taking the electronics away before kids go to sleep. There's actually a bunch of brain research that shows that when kids are sleeping in a room with their cell phone, even if their cell phone's turned on Do Not Disturb, their brains are less restful during sleep. Somehow consciously they remain aware that their electronics are in the room. And so even just by nature of having their electronics in the room when they're sleeping, their rest is not as substantial. And so great idea to pull those devices out of the room and store them while kids are sleeping. It also prevents them from waking up and checking things in the middle of the night. So just something to think about.
There's a great question from Courtney. Flynn, that's probably a great one for you to answer, talking about the Zooms. And I hear you. One struggle I see with my 8th grader is Zoom fatigue, which is very real. After completing 5 or 6 Zooms in a row, she's more drained, eyes, mind, than if she went to 5 classes in a row. And probably true. Perhaps the teachers could be mindful of this towards the end of the day and maybe suggest for students to have a get up and shake it or turn eyes away from the screen minute as a lead into class.
Yeah, happy to field that. We are actually, Courtney, asking teachers to be mindful of that very thing, and at the same time, trying to balance the fact that some number of our students are in different time zones. And so if they're on Mountain Time or West Coast time, their days would be starting much earlier if we had a synchronous meeting first thing. And so one of the opportunities for some flexibility that those kids have, and that all parents should consider available to them, is for their kids to join different sections meetings of synchronous classes. So if you think that your kid's English teacher has 3 other sections that they're teaching, and on a given day will probably have some combination of synchronous lessons with all of those sections, or at least over the course of a couple days. And so if the section that's being assigned by one of those teachers isn't aligning with your kid's sleep pattern, especially if there's someone because of anxiety or depression or having a hard time getting a restful night's sleep and are sleeping in much later, I suggest reaching out to the advisor and sharing that observation with them and asking the advisor to work with your kids' teachers to find alternative sections that better accommodate their sleep cycle. Not something I would fall back on just as like a matter of course or for the sake of like routine convenience, but if your kid is up very, very late worrying or perseverating or is waking up in the middle of the night and having a hard time going back to sleep, and you want them to get more sleep in the morning, advisors are available to work with those kids and families in that way.
I'm wondering too, Jeff, if you have some advice for high school parents. I love what Flynn was saying about no cell phones in the room and trying to make sure that that is not adding to sleep disturbances. At least anecdotally, and in my house, that is harder when you have high school students. And just wondering if you've had any success talking to any of the students that you're working with about ways that they've been able to do that.
Yeah, are you able to hear me?
Yeah.
All right, thank you. Sorry, technical difficulties on this end, but I think I'm finally back. I was going to jump in and tell the story about my son, who's now 21, and how the rule in our family just was that he was never allowed to bring the cell phone upstairs. So whenever he had to go upstairs to bed, it never came up. And for a while, I was literally the meanest dad ever. And so for a while, that's how it stayed. But what ended up happening was when he got to be a senior, he would actually was thankful because all the kids, he just knew that they couldn't text him because if they did, he didn't have his phone. This time is different, right? What we're dealing with right now in this situation is different. What I have been talking to the students about is not trying to bring their phones into their room. Flynn is right with this research. There is research about how students So this research says that the brain stays aware even with the phone in the room, which is wild, but it's true. And so the brain gets a more restless sleep with the phone in the room. Not bringing it in is huge. What your teenagers are going to argue is that how are they supposed to stay connected and have their social connections and their social conversations? My response is, who are you talking to at 1 o'clock in the morning and 2 o'clock in the morning? And I don't know why that makes any sense. And so part of what I want to send out to this community, and I really think it needs to be a community that works together here, is that if we say together as a community that our children cannot have their phones past midnight, nobody's going to be texting anybody, right? Because if they're all out of their rooms by midnight, who are they supposed to be texting? Who are they supposed to be communicating with? Now, they might say, I need to go on TikTok or I need to go on Instagram, but the research there is very clear too. That will activate the brain and make them more restless and keep them up longer. It does not make them more tired. In fact, it is the worst idea that they can do to rest their brains. Some of them will even argue that in between homework, they should get on their phones and look at their phones because that's a rest time. That's also inaccurate. That also overly activates their brains and doesn't work. So do I have a perfect solution here for you? No. I think the best solution would be is if as a community we could come together and say, look, by midnight, phones out of the room. That would be the most ideal. And if all parents do it, it won't be a problem. But the problem is if we have a couple of parents that allow it to happen, then it all falls apart. So as a community, I'd love to get together and do something like that.
You know, benefit I see to that too, Jeff, is a lot of kids start the day really overwhelmed with how much they have to get caught up on social media. That even for those parents that take the phones away at night, if not all parents are doing that, then the kid that's in their room without their phone at 7:30 in the morning opens it up and they've got a bunch of TikTok videos to watch. They have a bunch of Instagram likes that they have to create, messages to post. And starting the day like that can be really overwhelming. And I mean, if even just, I know sometimes I wake up and I have that feeling of anxiety, like, what does my inbox look like this morning? Kids experience that too. And so that's another benefit, I think, if everybody could, a community-wide effort to make sure kids don't have their phones at night would also be a community-wide effort to protect them from that in the mornings.
Yeah. Look, I would drive my son into school in the mornings, and all he would do on the way into school was Snapchats, right? And he would picture here and smile, and then a picture here. So he was sending, I don't know, God knows how many back in the morning. And so Flynn, again, absolutely correct. I would much prefer my son doing it in the morning than losing sleep at night. If I had my druthers, I'd throw the phone away and there'd be none of this, but that's not a possibility. So if I had to choose between getting a good night's sleep or having him do it in the morning, I'd rather have him doing it in the morning and not having any anxiety out of FOMO, right? You're all aware of FOMO, fear of missing out. This is like a big word with the teens. They're going to have FOMO if they don't have their phone because they might miss something critical. But if they all know he's not going to be there, that just saved him. He then didn't have to engage in that or have to worry about that.
I would just add one last thing to the times where there's sort of negative feedback that they're getting on the phone. Receiving negative feedback at midnight is very, very hard to deal with. Not that it's not hard, that's never easy to deal with, but at least in the morning you've had some sleep and there's better perspective.
You know, and looking at social media, and I'm sorry to get into this, but the amount of comparison that goes on in looking at social media, right? Everything is a comparison. And what we want our kids to get into is compassion and not comparison. But what unfortunately happens for all of us is we go on social media and we see this person and we see that person and we see this person. And, you know, when we pick our pictures to put on social media, how many of us don't look at the picture, randomly put it on there and be like, yeah, who cares what this looks like? Versus how many of us scroll through the picture, make sure the lighting is perfect, the angle's right, we fix the picture, and we spend 3 hours when we post that picture, right? Because we are going to put our all-star picture out there. That's what we put on, that's what we put online. And what the kids are looking at is everyone else's all-star picture all the time. And I try to get this message across to the teens. And I always use an example that a kid told me from New Year's Eve. And he said, you know, Jeff, I was at a New Year's Eve party. It was the most boring thing ever. Nobody was talking. Nobody was doing anything. And then 2 minutes before midnight, they turned the music on. We all got up and we danced and we jumped around. And the cameras were going crazy at that time. And people took hundreds of pictures in those 2 minutes. And then after the 2 minutes, boring, not doing anything, not talking. But what did the world see? They saw those 2 minutes of this great time. And they didn't see the boring time that was happening before. But kids don't see that. And then they compare themselves and they think, look at what I'm missing. And that's the FOMO. I've missed this, I've missed this, I've missed this. And when you activate that part of the brain at midnight or 1 o'clock in the morning, for a teenager where social connection is everything, there is no way that they are going to be falling asleep comfortably, restlessly at that point in time. In fact, you are sending them to bed with anxiety about how they are not good enough. And so again, I'm preaching, and I'm sorry, I'll get off the soapbox in a second, but if I could do this, I would have everybody take the phone away at midnight and just have all parents make this agreement. And I wonder what would happen in our community if we could do that.
And I'll just add one more thing and then I'll stop the preaching also. But you add that what Jeff was talking about, the comparison, yes, it is sometimes with their peers, but it's also looking at a celebrity culture and, you know, the people that are TikTok famous or however else, whatever celebrities, and also judging yourself against these people or even these people. That's not reality. You all know this. But it's just comparison everywhere that they turn. And it's just a lot of inadequate feelings and anxiety.
It looks like somebody has their hand raised down at the bottom. Is that Kathy Steele? Do you want to unmute, Kathy, and share what you're thinking?
Yes, hi. So I've been on these calls before, and thank you. They're always so informative. I really appreciate that the school does this. For those of you that have heard me on these calls before, screen time is a big issue in our house, and it's always something I have questions about. On this subject, I would say I've been doing a lot of reading about sleep and its benefit for immunity boosting. And so especially in the times of a pandemic, I'm even more concerned about getting enough sleep, and not just my kids and screens, but myself. You know, these are anxious times and no one sleeps as well as they should. But I think we have more stringent rules than many for screens. And I'm lucky that my high schooler still has to put his phone into me by 10:30 at night. It goes into my closet. You know, my middle schooler has his phone down by 9:30. But what we've found lately is we are much more relaxed now on the weekends when they're not doing other things and they don't have sports and they don't have the ability to see friends in real time. They're doing a lot more virtually, and we've relaxed almost completely our rules on the weekend. I'm gratified that even when they have more relaxed rules, the kids still seem to be sort of setting their own limits and bringing the phone up to my closet at, you know, sometimes it's midnight, but they're actually self-policing. And so I think it's been, you know, good for them to have the responsibility themselves, and great to see them actually being responsible. So I just wanted to make that comment.
Kathy, I love it. You know, my son who's home now from college, the phone still stays downstairs. Right? So it's just a good habit that he's always gotten into. So when he goes to bed, it just doesn't come up the stairs. So that's the self-policing.
And I would just chime in, as we have been each time, really just sharing, you know, this is a new and different time, and things have changed. So, you know, on the weekend, things probably do look a little different. And if your child is connecting socially and that's how they're doing it, you know, be kind to yourself and less judgmental about the restrictions or time limits that you've had in the past.
To middle school parents, I would say my children aren't old enough to have phones and technology yet, right? And so I won't pretend like I have the same struggle. But I did spend 4 years at a junior boarding school where multiple nights a week there were 28 cell phones to collect from kids grades 7, 8, and 9 before they went to bed. And the same 3 nights a week to return, 3 mornings a week to return to them after their rooms were cleaned up and their backpacks were packed and they were ready to go for the school day. And so I know the very real struggle of literally pulling those phones from the kids' hands in some cases. Some kids would even go online and get dummy phones that they'd submit, and like fake phones. And so if there are any parents that are having a hard time thinking about how to strategize that exchange on a nightly basis, feel free to reach out directly to me. I have way more experience than I would like, and happy to share some tricks of the junior boarding school trade.
Thank you, Flynn. There was a mention in there that I was reading through about Zoom fatigue. Did I miss that? The Zoom fatigue question?
Yeah, I think Flynn answered that, but Courtney, you can chime in if there's something else that you'd like to talk about with that.
Well, I have a quick thought on that, which is that I've been on a bunch of conversations with high school kids who are reporting incredible fatigue. And so when they're ending their day at 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock, they're saying to me, my parents don't understand just how tired I am at that point in time of the day. You know, and then they're asked to do and take on other responsibilities. And please don't mishear me, parents. I'm not saying don't give them other responsibilities. But what they are reporting is that people are not understanding just how tired they are and how much their brain hurts. You know, I start on the computer at something like 7 o'clock, 7:30 in the morning, and sometimes I'm on till 8:30, 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock at night. I can absolutely second what they're saying with this Zoom fatigue. My eyes hurt, my brain hurts, and I don't even think so well come 10 o'clock at night. That's a great time to have an argument with me because I don't even know if I'd be able to argue my point. But this Zoom fatigue is for real, and it's causing not only cognitive like cloudiness, but it's causing physical fatigue. And that's where I really want the kids to get their eyes off the computer and get outside and do something physical for themselves. But parents, I just want you to recognize too, that also that comes with that is poor frustration tolerance, right? Mood swings, lack of patience, arguments over silly things that you can't even believe you're arguing over. And so just pay attention to some of these things that are, that the behaviors are the iceberg above the water, and what's causing these are all these pieces below the water that we're not aware of that these kids are struggling with. And so the high school, we're gonna actually put a little presentation on for the high school kids and help them better understand what kind of stuff they're going through and what the struggles are that they're feeling, so that they can even begin to identify their own emotions, their own behaviors, and their own cognitions. And if they can identify those, perhaps they can put in some strategies to help support themselves.
It looks like there's an added question or comment there. Wondering if classes can have assignments / projects that allow kids to do some work offline, hands-on assignments.
I think there's a little difference with the middle school and the high school. So I don't know if Flynn and Chris want to take that one.
Well, Patty's a middle school parent. I don't think that that there is a Stark in the upper school, so I'm happy to start. As I've said too, teachers are being encouraged to do just that. And what I would say, Patty, is if it doesn't look like that is as significant a part of the girls' experience as it could or should be, or you or they would like it to be, I would not hesitate to reach out and share your observations with their advisors. And advisors have been really, really good about forwarding those parent observations to teachers. And teachers have gotten a lot of practice with being agile and sort of dynamic in their programming and responsive. And so I think if that were true for more so Ellie, for example, then I would reach out to her teachers and say, or to her advisor and say, any way that you might be able to work with her teachers, this is some of what I'm observing. I'd love your help, and count on the teachers to be responsive.
We feel the same at the upper school. I mean, we certainly are encouraging teachers to be thinking of additional ways for students to engage in the work. A lot of the passion projects that kids are involved with do involve them using their hands, building something, connecting with something, playing an instrument, doing something that's not screen-based. A few still are screen-based as well. But that's definitely a good direction we want to go in.
Any other questions or concerns? If somebody wants to unmute themselves and jump in. Oh, Kathy, looks like your hand is raised.
If Kathy's not going, then I'd like to.
Sure.
Leora here. So firstly, just a huge thanks to everybody, and a special hats off to Jen Donnelly and the amazing opportunities that have been offered to the kids with the service. We're finding that that's given a really good opportunity for our family to get together and do non-screen-based activities in addition to being able to help. But we're struggling, around things, the more craft things like making the screens, the plastic face shields, is quite tricky because we're just really unable to get the supplies, and where supplies are available, they seem to be huge bulk orders. So I was just wondering, this is probably not the right forum, but there is a connection between being able to get our kids involved from a morale point of view as well as an off-screen handcraft point of view in being able to do some of those activities. And if we could coordinate that, you know, we can buy these things in bulk and split them out across people who want to do it, then I do think we're adding another opportunity for the kids to do that kind of very beneficial activity.
I think that's great feedback. I can certainly get that to Jen and see what we can coordinate. I don't know, Flynn and Chris, if you're aware of some of the other things. She's so amazing, as you all know. And I'm not even sure of everything she's doing, honestly.
There's a huge collection of stuff that she's got kids and families involved in. And I think just the other day sent out the second email that had sort of a refreshed list of opportunities. But what I'm hearing Leora suggest is that it'd be nice to try to go from more sort of individualized efforts to a collective thrust. And I think that that's a really awesome idea. I mean, I know, for example, Patricia Moran was making no-sew masks and was making them in bulk and sharing them with various folks that I think with nursing homes and things like this. And so there's some amount of that already happening in the community that I think that we could coordinate. And so putting Jen, getting her brain on that, I think would, whenever Jen's brain is on anything, action happens. And so definitely, Laura, you and I both could, and Marshall's on the call too, between the three of us, let's for sure plant that seed with Jen and see where she can take it. Laura, thanks for that suggestion. I love it.
Yeah, Flynn, and thanks also for taking up the idea of getting some kind of a challenge going, because I think, you know, the more we can, if you know, if we could get our boys, I'm talking as a 7th grade mother of Tal, and his friends to have a challenge over, you know, cooking food for kids in crisis, or over making face shields and masks, and get them to be using their hands and sewing, I think it will just add a whole other level of engagement between the kids. That's not just, you know, FaceTiming and whatever the other stuff is that they're doing. And if a parent volunteer is needed to help coordinate that with Jen, I'm happy to put my hand up.
Your hand was already up, Leora. I was coming your way anyway.
Kathy, did you have a question before?
No, I did not. That was an accident.
Okay. Anybody else have any questions or concerns or things they want to bring up to this group? All right, all. Then I will say goodbye for this week. And as you all know, if there's anything going on or there's something that is more concerning that you don't want to bring up with this group, please feel free to reach out to us individually, and we will jump on that and try to help in any way we can. And we will see you all next week. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Hi, thank you.
Adam, are you reading the comments?
I'm just reading this last one that came in.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
missed it.
Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah.
All right. See you guys.
Sorry about the beginning, Polly. I don't know what happened.
No, that's all right. We all have those moments. So I'm the one that pushed record. So I guess that's why I'm hanging out here.
Yeah, I
maybe-
mean, you can click stop record right now and we'll still stay on.
So
but it
will you